Every day, local government makes modern life possible. Water flows, roads are repaired, parks and playgrounds open and come to life. And behind each one of those services is a story of people who show up, care deeply, and lead with purpose, even when no one is watching. This is the HaltingWinter Podcast, and it's part of the HaltingWinter Project, a movement to restore pride, purpose, and participation in local government by sharing the stories that build belonging. I'm Seth Winterhalter, and every week I tell the stories that remind America where government really lives, locally, in our cities, our counties, and our communities. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to thank our founding sponsor, Tyler Technologies, a company that's been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998. From smarter budgeting to stronger resilience, Tyler Tech equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore practical resources and hear the real success stories from communities across the country at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. Tyler Technologies, empowering the public sector to build stronger, more connected communities. Now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Jamie Gwynn, Township Manager in New Hanover Township, Pennsylvania. Can't wait to hear what's going on the eastern side of the seaboard. Jamie, welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you on today.
Pleasure to be here, Seth. Thanks for having me on. And like I told you before we came on, I don't typically like doing podcasts unless I have something to say. But I really appreciate you nudging me. So I hope that your listeners get at least one thing that helps them in their life. And if they do, then this was time well spent for me. So you know us as managers, we don't like it to be about us. So this is not a humble brag podcast for me. This is just trying to pay it forward for all those people that want to be managers in life, and hope it helps.
Totally. Well, I think I love that about this podcast. We're not really looking for something specific to say. We're looking for your story. And I think people's stories are inspiring because they help us remember that there is no one way to get to our future. The paths weave and they flow. And I think that's what we're going to unpack today. It's so cool to be out back in the east side of the country. I've been in Kansas and come more on the west side lately. And so I think about Christopher Gargis, Soulbury Township out there, again, a neighbor of yours. I think of Michael Paul, who's in Plainville, Connecticut, who I think was the big inspiration. He's like, you got to get Jamie on. He's cool, young millennial guy. Okay. So we're going to have fun unpacking really not only your professional career, but really your insights into what it means to be a young manager and kind of what social media and AI and all these things. But before we get to that, let's do what we do here on the HaltingWinter Podcast. Take us back to the beginning, Jamie, and tell us about the childhood. Where were you born? And what were some of the things as you were raised that kind of shaped you and molded you into the person you are today?
So originally from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, born and raised. I went to Wilkes University as an undergrad. Started off as a political science major. Went into communication though, so I have a background also in public relations. But Wilkes-Barre, it's top 25 largest in the state of Pennsylvania. So, 50,000 people there. And I got to know local politics from a young age through my mom. My mom left school at 16 years old to be a manager of a local pizza shop. And a fun fact about Northeastern PA is it's one of the largest per capita in people who eat pizza in the world. So a lot of good pizza spots in Northeastern Pennsylvania, but the pizza place that my mom was manager of for 40 plus years before she passed was she was kind of like, she's called the mayor of Wilkes-Barre because she was no nonsense, took care of business. And I just learned a lot from her, but all of the who's who of politics in Luzerne County and in Wilkes-Barre frequented this pizza place. So I got to know the ins and outs of that and just became fascinated with kind of how that works. I had no knowledge of what a municipal manager was because I was born in a community that had a mayor. Although Wilkes-Barre Township always had a township manager, but just something we didn't think about. So when I went to Wilkes, my goal was to learn about politics more, maybe come home and run for mayor of Wilkes-Barre. But when I graduated from Wilkes, I graduated like near the top of my class. I say that because I was a conditionally accepted student at Wilkes. So didn't really do well in school, turned it around, got a chance, and then I think I just really focused and I wanted to be the best. So I'm really proud of that. And but I felt unpolished, so I took a chance. I did the Teach for America program. I wanted to teach fourth grade because at that time there was statistics that for every fourth grader who didn't know how to read, they built a prison cell for them. So I don't know, I just wanted to kind of, learn something different and grow up a little bit, just from the dynamic of being in Wilkes-Barre. So, taught in Baltimore for 2 years and then, thought about coming back home to Wilkes-Barre, but, felt that I can get a little more polished. So I got my master's degree from University of Pennsylvania in the Fells Institute of Government, which is one of the original, schools that was founded on public administration. So largely public policy that we see in America. Public administration fascinated me. And then kind of took it from there. And then started my career, learned about municipal management and said, so we have this whole field where you could be a municipal manager and you don't have to be elected.
Mm.
I'm like, so I don't have to owe anybody anything and I could still get things done. And that was very appealing to me because I just want to do the right thing. And so I'm sure we'll unpack more of that Wilkes-Barre background, but like that's kind of like the clip notes of kind of how I got into it.
I love it. I love it. Let's go back to being raised in the school environment. Again, it's one thing to be raised in kind of a restaurant environment, but pizza shops bring in everybody. Like you said, it's the college student. It's, anyone can afford a slice, but you also, again, if it's a really good shop, you get all kinds of people. Like you can get famous people and tourists and the mayors and the electeds. And so how was that? And again, so I'm gonna make some assumptions and you correct the story. You go into communication studies, I would imagine your mom and that environment is like a communication, people communicating, people coming in and you hearing stories. What was that like? What shaped you to think about your studies in communication? And you also mentioned that you weren't a great student here in high school. What was distracting Jamie? What was your mind kind of filled with, and what changed then as you went to Wilkes to really go, okay, I got to harness on this. I gotta change kind of the focus.
I often think about this, and for us municipal managers out there, it's sort of like nothing prioritizes your mind as getting ready for a board meeting. And so I can equate to like my senior year of high school. I went to my guidance counselor and she was like, look, you have like a 2.3 GPA. You should probably consider other options or go to community college. And I was like, wait, what? And that's I'm equating that to like, you're a week out from your board meeting, your packet's not done. You just gotta have to get your stuff together. So, I was a good student for, a long time, but I think just high school, I started drifting. I was raised by my mom. I'm the youngest of three. But I don't know, like video games and life. And I didn't take things seriously. I was interested, in hanging out with girls more than I was, studying for my test. And, I think it caught up to me and I was like, well, I can't do anything about the past, right? What I can't do. So I had a 4.0 my entire senior year. I just want to show people that when I'm focused, I mean business. So that's kind of what led into, getting into Wilkes, getting a conditional accepted. But going back to the pizza shop is, when you're taught communication studies, it's, well, here's how you write, here's how you speak. But I think my education from that pizza shop, like I worked there myself from age 12, through college. And I always joke about this. And I'm going to knock on the proverbial wood, but like the only person who's ever fired me was my own mother. And there's funny stories about that, Seth, but it's one of those, when a county commissioner, Luzerne County, changed to a county manager format, and I was involved in that as well. And that's fascinating in itself. But they had 3 county commissioners, and my mom was really good friends with one of those 3 county commissioners. He'd come in, but I just noticed how, like, without him saying anything, how powerful he was, that he could move a room. And I just became really fascinated. Took a liking to me and just showed me the ropes in different ways. Or like the local judge. And I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Kids for Cash scandal. But like my mom's good friend was Mark Shirella, who was the judge in that scandal. And just seeing how his power eroded through that was fascinating. And I learned that, power is not always front facing. It's very subtle. And just, so and like the mayor of Wilkes-Barre and just things that he did. And, like he was very, vocal and outgoing. So like different styles of leadership. So, and my mom, just being a pizza maker had incredible power with presence. Now people like looked at her, respect her, and she'd have to say things all the time. So that just really rooted me in understanding the different dynamics of how people operate, within a known system or an unknown system that they're in.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me. Like you say, you go to college for the scholastic educational framework of communication, but you really had probably a doctoral degree in real communication from that pizza shop. And it's one of the things I highlight. Maybe 2 things I want to highlight too for young people listening to this podcast. First, I love that your story is probably mirrored by a lot of young listeners who go, man, I'm just not passionate. The high school experience, especially if you're a real thinker, I think if you have some real raw talent, it's not very motivating. Especially today, it seems like education's kind of watered down and and so you can kind of be bored. You can find other distractions with video games and life and relationships. And it really took, but yet again, when you knew, oh, I need to focus. Now I've got purpose and reason to focus. Now I'm on, right? It's the same thing. I find a lot of people will go to, and we'll talk about when you go into to get your MPA. It's one thing to learn the scholastic reality. It's another to get the hands-on experience of city management, because the two worlds are quite different. To learn policy and right the scholastic approach, and then to go, oh, like city management and the whole life of local government. This is like missional, and it's people and it's relationships and it's projects that take years and all kinds of stuff.
Well, also too is, and I haven't thought about this in a while, but like my mom used to work 5 days a week from 4 p.m. to midnight. So here I am, like I'm a teenager at home alone. So I think that kind of shaped that things weren't going to get done unless I did them myself. And my mom really taught me about not having excuses and being a hard worker. So, I think generationally is and I'm a parent of, 2 kids that were on the way. I frown upon not being there for my kids late night, but like, what was my mom going to do? She had to work, and we only lived up the street, so I can always walk down the street. But on one hand, I could certainly get into trouble there, and I have gotten into trouble there. But on the other hand, I've learned some different valuable lessons about, working through things. And so a lot of that, just has really grounded me in, how I think I've been a sustainable manager.
It's always interesting that's why I love this podcast, looking back and just going, yeah, what has shaped me? What has formed and influenced me? I think it's interesting is you're doing your undergrad, communication studies, public relations, and then you go and you work for Teach for America. Talk to us about that, because I wonder if there's young people, again, I think there's a lot of pressure for young people that like, oh, I can't make any mistakes. I've got to be perfect on this. I got to take this job and do this and climb the ladder this way. If I want to I love that you're just like, I'm gonna take an adventure. I'm gonna go to Baltimore and teach young kids to try to keep them out of prison. We got to teach them to read. What was working for Teach for America, and what was that 2-year stint like?
So I want to go back for a second. So when I was an undergrad at Wilkes, and when I was in that first year of political science, and Wilkes University has like a baller political science program, I just learned right away that the theory of it was it wasn't for me. Because I was like, I want to get my fingers into it. So I started thinking about like, where's this going to go? And with the communication, at that time, Wilkes, they had like a student-run newspaper. They had a student-run TV studio. They had like a lot of different opportunities, like with public relations. Like I ran like a tremendous amount of events, raised a lot of money. Like you can kind of see like that municipal manager mindset of project management coming together and building that foundation, at least for me. And I thought that was fascinating. which probably helped how I got good grades because I was invested and motivated and I was able to see outcomes. So when I got to, and I'd done a ton of internships and a lot of them weren't that good, but I learned a lot about different things. But one of the internships I did, I ended up interning with the city of Wilkes-Barre in the mayor's office. And also in my senior year with Senator Bob Casey when he was senator. So I got just different views of state versus local politics and started thinking like, okay, what can I do? These styles are different. So with Baltimore, and when you do Teach for America, at least at that point, you could like select where you want to go. And there's a couple options. And I was like, Philadelphia, Baltimore. And the only way I knew about Baltimore is because like I took a bus through it. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And I heard they have good food. And then I got an acceptance letter like, welcome to Baltimore. I go, okay, I'm going to Baltimore. So like what drove me to go to Baltimore? Like earlier, like to polish me up. But I think those internships, when I dealt with people in the mayor's office of Wilkes-Barre and I dealt with constituents in Senator Casey's office at the time, I realized when I was in my bubble with my mom, it was all like-minded people that were like me, that were scratching for, for pennies and trying to get by. But I learned that there were different people out there that needed help and I had no commonality with them. And I said, let me get out of my complete comfort zone. I think my naivete probably got me, better than if I thought about it now, I'd be like, probably wasn't a good idea. But I threw myself into there. And I will tell you, it is still, no joke, the hardest time in my life. So difficult that it makes me feel that anyone who is a teacher, I am convinced, has a foundation in place to be a municipal manager, because there are so many parts of teaching that are transitional skills in a municipal manager role. And so like for Baltimore, like me getting through that 2-year experience, I always look back and I tell anybody who is trying to go through life, I'm like, don't rush to get to where you want to go. Make sure you're ready for when it happens. It's like if you were to graduate college at 18, we'll clap for you, but like you're only in the real world 4 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And now what? Now it's the rest of your life. Like sure, I'd want to be the number 1 draft pick, but do I really want to go to the Jets? No. I want to be like a long, sustaining QB1 in the municipal manager field. And it isn't it like, aren't we like the NFL draft at times? Like you have to take calculated risks. So looking back, I think, I fell into it, but I think Baltimore is a calculated risk that I certainly got more out of the experience than those poor kids got out of me.
Well, it seems to echo part of your story that's very, it's very, not practical is not the right word. It's very, you look for opportunities to do tactical things, right? You want to get your hands dirty. You're at school, you highlight that at Wilkes, you're, part of all these opportunities to do, not just learn, not just stay in your head, but practice. You said you do a lot of internships. I think to encourage young people, don't just go and do the class thing. Get your hands dirty as much as possible, because then you find yourself. You can't really find yourself in thought. You have to find yourself in practice. And so I love that. And again, it seems like Teach for America. Let's go get our hands dirty. Let's go be a missional. Let's go solve a problem, or at least be a part of impacting a problem. And like you said, it teaches you some big lessons. You're away from home. You're in an environment where there are struggles and challenges that you have to work through. What was it as you end that time with Teach for America that took you back into thinking of getting your next stop is University of Pennsylvania, where you get the MPA? What were you thinking there? Were you thinking, I just need a master's degree? Okay, this isn't it. What was going through your head there that made you go for that degree specifically?
Well, I think to go back to the challenge of this was, so I'm graduating, I think I had a 3.9 or 3.91 at Wilkes, so top 1%. So here I am. I was grinding for 4 years because I wanted people to know I wasn't that 2.3 GPA student. That edge I thought was a healthy edge. But a part of me, I think, got cocky and was like, all right, I know what I'm doing. But then now I look as like, I'm only, I'm 39 in January, and I scope out and I go, well, like Wilkes University compared to what? So with Teach for America, they're pulling people from Ivy League schools throughout the world. These are like world-class thinking students that are way smart. So I didn't realize necessarily that. So I anticipated I'd get into Teach for America. I didn't realize what a privilege it was to be chosen. But with Teach for America, you get thrown right into it, Seth. It's not like I had 2 years to figure this out. They're like, welcome to Baltimore. You have like 2 weeks to get there. And we're going to put you in this institute in Philly for a few weeks. It was actually 5 weeks. And then you're going right into like what school you're going to go to and get a class. So like the pedagogy is for being a teacher. This is why like I'm conflicted with Teach for America's model in general. I'm just like, I cannot disrespect those who went through 4 years of the pedagogy and the experience of being a teacher. Is why I always love teachers. It is hard. It is, I don't care even if you're in Baltimore or not, it's hard being a teacher. It's hard being in front of 20, 30 kids and trying to get them from A to B. But like, had no experience, I think like half of the people who went to Baltimore didn't even finish Institute. And then like the percentage of them that got through Institute and got to their school in the first 2-3 weeks statistically leave. And I was like, I will not be that statistic. And I will keep showing up. And I can't tell you how many times I failed every single day. Culturally, like Baltimore is historically not my skin color. So I'm dealing with an entire different understanding of cultures that I'm not used to. And so that's why I said my naivety, I think, got me through. And it goes back to municipal management likability. Is I think if you're likable, people are willing to help you. And I think if you just apologize, people are way more willing to help you. So I think I apologize more than ever. But like getting through that experience of that first year and saying, I didn't die. I cried a lot, but I learned something about myself in that no matter how many times you hit me, I will fall down and I will get back up and I come back. And I think that was the way. I mean, like, and we can scale that back to municipal management. Like, how many times does that happen in like where we spend how much of our time, trying to get a project from A to B and it fails and it's a waste of time, but you got to keep going, right? So that first year of Baltimore, I still have like dreams and nightmares to this day of going through that and palpitating heart, chest pains. But I'll tell you this, from year 1 to 2, then I had a summer and I said, all right, I learned everything I shouldn't have done. And now I'm going to learn how to do conflict resolution. I'm going to be the best person at getting kids to work together. And I'll tell you, I think I turned off my brain on like, at that time, Maryland was really big on like, oh man, we got to like get these kids ready for this test. And my mind was like black and white. How do we get there? And then you can see the municipal manager form in us is formed in me because I was like, I don't care about the test. How do I teach kids how to read so they don't go to jail? And I think that when I look back on it is like, how many times do we get into our field and we're like, this is how everybody has done it. And this is how you got to do it. And I think for me works, I'm like, where do I want to go? Where are we driving that bus to? Don't worry about how we get there. Maybe the bus isn't going to be yellow, right? I don't care. If you care about the end goal, I will get you there. It's not going to look the way you look. And I think that moment evolved me into the manager I am today because that was the strength of that foundation. That was me connecting all that confidence as a kid with my mom into the practical version of the beginning of my adulthood. And I rocked that second year. And I'll tell you, I did way better as a calm, relaxed teacher, being a steady force for kids. And my scores were better in year 2 than they were in year 1. I was more creative. And I got to admit, I really thought about staying and being a teacher because I felt like I was really onto something. But I think God had different plans for me.
And yeah, I love it. This is so good. And so you end up, so you choose not to. You choose to go back to not only get your master's, but to get an MPA. So what went through Jamie's mind as you're wrestling with, do I do teaching? Do I go back? What landed you in the MPA program?
Well, like when we were Teach for America, we were afforded the opportunity, at least in Maryland, to go to Johns Hopkins and get like your master's in education. I didn't want to do that because I want to, with whatever time I had, I want to focus on at least being there for those kids. Not disrespecting those who want to get the master's. I just there's no time to do anything set. Like you're just trying to learn and catch up. And I was like, I know me and I'm going to struggle there. So after after like a year and a half, I had to make decisions. I was like, what am I going to do? Am I leaving Baltimore? Am I staying? And I seriously thought about going to Johns Hopkins and getting a degree in counseling. And I go, look, I really love kids. I love how these students are. I love this community. I go, maybe I can do that and be like a guidance counselor for high school kids. Like that was a path that I really considered. So I applied that way. But I also was like, we have a partnership with Penn. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would get in, but I was like, let me try to, I'm from Pennsylvania. We'll see. I'll roll dice. And I remember like a good friend at the time I was living with, his mom used to be a nun. And so like born and raised Catholic, left the church, came back after all that experience. But I was like, Eric, I'm about to send these letters in. Can your mom say a prayer over these letters to Penn? And it was God's plan. And she did. And I will tell you this is I didn't necessarily get in at first, but I got a chance to explain why like my grad tests were terrible. Because there was something else, I guess, that the person who was managing the program, who was David Thornburg. So let's bring that back. David Thornburg's dad was Governor Dick Thornburg. And so he saw something there and he's like, what's going on with this? And so I had a shot. So when I got that, everything from my childhood came back. All my experiences came back to me. I said, I want to do this. Like I could certainly be a guidance counselor, but like my heart is, I'm getting fired up again thinking about it. And I go, I'm going to go that way. So that's kind of how that led me to that. Now, when I did the interview with David Thornburg, I was already down like a competitive point because he's a huge Steelers fan and I'm coming from Baltimore. And I think his first question was like, are you a Ravens fan? I go, which team should I be a fan of? And he laughed, but we talked a lot about things we just talked about this podcast about like that. And I think as ironic in my life is he's like, I'm going to conditionally let you in. And so it brought that looks, but I also think that was helpful for me because it brought that edge back. That like, you're not 100% yes, but you're that. So like that chippiness, I think makes me a better leader because I'm like, what is going on that I can never be like the first choice, but it's okay. You don't know me yet. And so, yeah. So I get into Penn and that was a 2-year program. So.
And while you're in that program, like when you started that, you're not thinking city manager, right? Or was that on your radar?
I was thinking I'm going to do 2 years. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go run for mayor.
Yeah. So you're thinking more elected. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Elected official. What happens over that 2-year MPA program? Because this is the story of most people I have on the podcast. They're not really aware of city management until some of them even after they do the MPA program and start working for cities. But what happens in that program? Obviously, your first position after that program, you're going to go to Northampton Township and be the assistant to the manager. But what happens in the awareness of that program to city management, to local government? What ignites you to kind of set the trajectory?
So what a little side story here is one of the first books we were assigned to read in like my first class that was run by David Thornburg. And like I'll love that man for the rest of my life for taking a chance on me and support him in anything he wants to do. Was a story about Robert Moses, the power broker, Robert Caro. And I have it like behind me in my office. It's probably my favorite book in life. And I don't know if any listeners have read Robert Caro, but he also has like The Master of the Senate, Olympe Johnson. Fascinating. But The Power Broker is like 2,000 pages. And like 3 weeks before our first class, Thornburg's like, the requirement for our first class is to read this book. And I am overwhelmed already because I'm like, holy smokes, how am I supposed to read 2,000 pages? But I do it because I'm like, I'm going to grind. I'm going to show this man that he made the right choice. We get to this first class. He's rapid firing question. There were 3 of us who read this book. But if you don't know the story of Robert Moses, it tells a story of a person who was never elected, who was appointed, who was able to amass power, almost like a municipal manager, and make things work. And I think that's fascinating. And I think the story of him still resonates and is a great read for anybody who wants to be a municipal manager. I guarantee you it'll be worth your time. It reads like 3,000 pages, but it's Robert Caro has such a style about him that it's an easier read than what that thinks. But so we get through, I'm comparing myself against all this other international talent. And I'm also one of the youngest. I'm I was 25 at that time, one of the youngest in the class. But what I realized is everybody's focused on Philadelphia, working in Philadelphia, and the program's founded on local governance, local government. So they had ICMA. I didn't know what that meant as an acronym for, our City Manager Association. It didn't really dawn upon me, Seth, until probably my second year, because in between my first and second year, Thornburg helped me get 2 unpaid internships. He's like, which one do you want to do? And I said, both. And both internships were fascinating because they both led me back home. And the first one was Luzerne County, as I was saying earlier. They were switching from a county commissioner to a county manager, which I've never heard of, form of government. So now there's going to be 11 council members and a county manager, and it's some guy from like California. And I'm like, this guy's not going to do well because you're coming to NEPA, and it's like being a Cowboys fan coming to Philadelphia and pretend to be an Eagles fan. It just doesn't work. So I said, sure, I'll go be a budget analyst for free. But at the same time, I got to go spend the summer in the mayor's office in the city of Scranton. And the mayor at the time was Chris Doherty. And the city was couldn't afford payroll for 2 cycles. That they had no money. And so that was fascinating from how do you govern that situation to a brand new form of government. And I think that was the best money I didn't get was being at those 2 internships while, Seth, going back to work with my mom at that pizza shop, which humbled me because I said, I never want to do this again. So what do I, so I go back after that experience and I'm I'm starting to figure it out. And I'm like, all right, I don't know how to get there, but I feel more confident in going home and running for politics. But I don't know what that looks like yet. So I do an internship with a company called Public Financial Management in my second semester, but I am starting to get nervous about prospects of job. And they have an opening and I don't get the job. So Seth, you see this trend. I'm not getting what I want, but I feel like in life, you get what you need, right? So there's a gentleman who's like, hey, I think I know what you're looking for. We have this client in Northampton Township. Now I was doing compensation analyses and stuff like that, but I was probably the dumbest person at PFM. I would be the person going around helping people get their coffee and trying to learn. Municipal manager, right? And everybody's grinding at typing in Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, that's not I could do it, but that's just not me all the time. So they probably want one of those. A turn and burn is what I call it. And he goes, can I get you to meet a guy named Bob Pellegrino, who's the manager at Northampton? And I was like, sure. Now, I don't think I ever told Bob this, but I started thinking, I'm like, Township. And in my mind, it was like Wilkes-Barre Township. The Wilkes-Barre is some small little township. What I didn't realize is Northampton Township is literally number 26 right after Wilkes-Barre. It's how ironic is that? Same size, same thing. So in my mind, and I was like, okay. But as I was doing that, I applied for a budget analyst position for Luzerne County. Northampton Township offered me $57,000. And I'll tell you, when you have $0, I had $300 in my bank account, that was millions of dollars to me at that time. The budget analyst position in Luzerne County was $30,000. And I would have went to Luzerne County because that's what I want to do. But they wouldn't offer me an interview because they said I didn't have enough experience. And I said, I just interned with you and did all your finances. And they're like, that's how our policy is written. And I think a light bulb went off for me. And I said, all right, something's going on here where there are people who read words on screens and make decisions. And there are people out there, and there are a lot of us, that get things done. And I was like, let me go do this interview with Bob. And I got to admit, on my Mount Rushmore of municipal leaders, that man is central on the head of the 4 because we had one dinner. I spent the entire day and I learned how powerful a municipal manager can be in kindness to staff, his presence around people. He didn't have to raise his voice. Coming from NEPA, we just yell at each other. And I just said, I have so much I don't know that I can't go back because I'm going to do a disservice to people in Wilkes-Barre. I need to learn from this man. And he offered me that job. And he bought me dinner, Seth. He bought me dinner, offered me a job. And so, I don't know, like that's I'll love Thornburg for the rest of my life. I'll love Bob Pellegrino for the rest of my life. I think we get these influential people in our life along the way that nudge us on the path that we're supposed to go. And some people say it's luck, some people say it's God's plan. It doesn't matter to me. I got there, and here we are.
We're living through one of the biggest shifts local government has ever seen. Not political, not cultural. It's digital. AI, automation, cybersecurity, cloud migration. None of this used to be part of your job description. But now it's the choppy water every city and county is swimming in. And for many leaders, it feels less like innovation and more like what's going to break next, and will we survive it? Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. A lot of governments aren't afraid of the cloud. They're afraid of getting it wrong. Because the stakes are real. You're trying to protect data, modernize ancient systems, improve service, and keep your residents happy, all while staying under budget and out of the fire. That's why I appreciate the team at Tyler Technologies. They don't talk about the cloud like it's magic pixie dust. They break it down. What to migrate, when to migrate, how to get long-term value without blowing your budget or burning out your people. They've helped more local governments make this transition than anyone I know, and they've put all their best insights into a new ebook about cloud adoption and strategy. If you're trying to lead your organization into the future instead of getting dragged there, you got to check this out. Their newest guide is called Modern Governments Live in the Cloud, and you can download it for free at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter, WINTER. tylertech.com/winter. Go check it out. Download the free guide. Now, back to the conversation. I love it. I love it. And again, to encourage, because I know a lot of local government leaders listen to this, and it's not that you have to, we talk a lot about mentorship and about those opportunities, internships. It's also, it's not that you have to even have, like, it's not like Bob set up, I got to create these environments and this dinner and have everything crafted. He just was himself. And when you're yourself and you are an effective leader, a compassionate, kind, right, a healthy leader, that rubs off and it influences. It allows people to look in and see not only what they aspire to be, but what is healthy. And so it's so cool that, again, you get this, you're there in Northampton as the assistant to the manager for 3-4 years. Yeah, what was it like?
Big fruit. And that's when the office was big stuff.
Yeah.
That's when the big, but I still reflect from time to time on when Bob offered me the job, I was like, absolutely. But I had to go use the restroom because my mind couldn't understand how he was able to do that. When I compared that against Luzerne County, where they're like, we can't interview you because of policy, I was like, I didn't know you could do that. And it's fascinating because, every government has a different policy, a different role. You have municipal leaders who are like, I can only do what people say I can do, versus others that are like, I could do anything unless I'm told not to. And there you go. It's what makes an effective leader. So for me, Bob opened up an entire door of possibilities in my mind. And again, in one meeting, I learned how deficient I was. And that humbled me, where I was like, I need to learn. And this is the place where I'm going to do that. So yeah, I was there, I think 3.5 years, but I'm also ambitious. And I want to get stuff done. And so I remember my first day, I was like, all right, I called Bob boss. I'm like, boss, what do you need me to accomplish today? He goes, all right, here's what I work on. Now, I was their first assistant to the manager. And their average tenure in Northampton at that time, 15 years. So there's a lot of seasoned people. And I'm like, I want to get things done. And he's like, I want you to work on the employee handbook and these other 2 things. That'll be your first month. The first day I had them all done. And it was we ended at 5:00 and it was 5:15. And Bob comes to my office. He's like, hey, how's your first day? I go, great. I'm just finished touches on this. He goes, don't be that guy. And I go, huh? He goes, you're already impressive. Don't be that guy. Go home and enjoy your life. It'll be here tomorrow. Now think about that from a management perspective, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of normalizing itself now, but you're talking, 12, 13 years ago, millennials are new into the workforce. And then also he's definitely smarter than I am now and then, but he also probably understood how I would look at that then is he probably didn't want me to show up other staff and create a situation where people isolated me. Because think about it, in every environment, you have a risk of ego. So does somebody think I'm going to take their job? Isn't that so? Like these silent lessons that I still think about that he taught me without having to say it. So
So good.
yeah. So to spend 3.5 years there, but I was like, I had a goal. I wanted to be a manager. I didn't know what that looked like, but that was the goal.
And even while you're there, you do some executive director for the Bucks County Association of Township Officials. Tell us about that, because again, you mentioned the ICMA, these groups, again, that work, city management, and leadership in local gov can be very isolating. Even though you can be a part of a larger organization, the higher you go in leadership can feel very alone. And it's not like there's you can go to a chamber of commerce and meet other business owners in your community, other CEOs, other, C-suite, whatever. There's only one town manager for the town, right? You got to go outside, and it can be harder to surround yourself with people who actually live in your kind of environment. What was it like to be a part of that association and to lead it at a young age?
Well, so I was getting a lot accomplished at Northampton, but I also, I had a lot of learning to do. And I always reflect back on that time. And I was like, wow, I was super naive on like how things worked, right? And I always tell this little mini story of we were taking out a multi-million-dollar bond issue. And I was like, I found this guy. He's newer in the field. He could save us about $100,000. And I remember being told yeah, but that's not the guy we're using. And in my mind, I'm like, well, we're going to save $100,000. And they're like, yeah, but the chair of the board is part of the Republican committee. And that's just not how things work, because he has a guy, and that infuriated me, but I understood it. Right. But it still infuriates me. But, but it's just one of those things. Sometimes you got to learn when to speak and when not to speak, right? When to choose your battles. So there's lessons that I'm learning there. But there was a guy named George Komolowski, and he passed away. He was another guy with tremendous presence, was chair of the board at Northampton, but well connected. And I started to remind myself of all those connections in Wilkes-Barre. When you think someone's going to come tell you how to fix something, no, sometimes shadows, right? Other people are hey, the message got to him, chill your stuff out, right? But this guy took, a liking to me and showed me the ropes in a different way. And he was on this board in Bucks County, it's in Chester County, Montgomery County they have where all these other elected officials are on this, executive board, and it's all policy and stuff. But it was this $8,000 part-time gig. And he's like, I want Jamie to do this. And Bob's like, great. And I'm doing this with the job, and I'm hustling harder because I want to make sure I'm respecting Northampton and also do this. But I just had an opportunity to work with 17 other elected officials to bring them together. And that started to glue. What do we got to do as municipal managers? We got to bring elected officials together, find commonality, because you serve all of them. You can say you serve, the pleasure of a majority, but you always got to keep tabs on all of them and make sure they're all, I always say I'm the glue. All I do is glue them together and move forward at all times. The paper might be ripped, the glue might be falling off, but I'm going to keep gluing it together to move us forward. But that foundation of BKATO, which is the acronym, really helped me to understand the elected side in a different way.
It's so good. And so again, I just love that you're just jumping in, you're saying yes, you're doing all these opportunities, figuring it out. And then you end up where you're at today. You become the township manager in New Hanover, and you'll be celebrating, I think you just, December here, you're celebrating 9 years. Next year will be 10. This is your first position. Again, it's really your second, kind of position in this environment, and now you're going to be in this top position. What was it like? Think back 10 years ago. What was it like to come into New Hanover, and what's it been like in that position now in the big seat for almost a decade?
So to continue that trend, so when I applied for New Hanover, I applied for a couple other positions that I knew I wasn't going to get, certainly confident, but just to feel it out, get my feet wet. And I remember a gentleman I respect a lot. He said, "Hey, Jamie, like, it's really difficult going from number 2, or as you are number 3, to number 1. But once you get number 1, you're there." And I'm like, "Well, how do I get to number 1?" He goes, "Experience and life experience. And unfortunately, life experience, you're so young, you just won't have. So like the experience like you have, but people are just not going to believe it. And that's okay. But you're going to have to get somebody to take a chance on you." And I got infuriated too. I was like, I could do it. So I applied for New Hanover because I felt with Northampton, with the development cycle was over. And that was one area where like I was good in finance because of public financial management. And I had that down. I had a really good finance director. And I learned a lot over the years about like how to do a really good budget and stuff. But I was like, I think the other side's like planning communities. So I'm a really big believer for those who want to be managers. If you can understand finances and planning and zoning, you can go anywhere. Because I think a lot of managers just want to be CEOs, and that's fine. But one thing Bob always taught me that I always pay it forward is, he said, "Jamie, focus on being a jack of all trades. You could always be a CEO. But once you're a CEO, you don't have enough time to get into the weeds of everything." So like, that's why my time at Northampton, he goes, I'm not going to throw a lot at you because I want you to dive in every department and learn what everybody does and how they do it, because that'll make you a better manager because you'll know how to do those things and people will respect you more. And so when New Hanover, I felt New Hanover, when I got here, had the 3rd most projected development in the state of Pennsylvania. It was 3rd fastest growing municipality in the state of Pennsylvania. There's 2,600 municipalities. And that in itself, I was like, that's fascinating because I want to be a part of something. And look, like I'm ambivalent whether it's development or not, but I was like, I just know from my roots in Wilkes-Barre, like if you don't do it right the first time, it all goes downhill. And so I was like, this is a rare opportunity to really build something from the ground up, depending on what the selective body wants to do. I'm not going to know unless I go. So I studied the community and I said, nobody knows about New Hanover, but I'm gonna marry love of my life. Like my in-laws are half an hour away. Like, it might work. So I get married and I have to do the interview like the day before my honeymoon set. Like before I hop on a plane, I'm like 29 years old and I go, sure. Because when people tell you when your interview is, you go. Like I get people now, they're like, could you do Tuesday instead? And I go, no, I'm taught when you're told where to be, you go, unless you have a medical emergency. So I do this interview and I thought, I was like, this went well. And my wife's like, how did it go? I go, I think I got it. And they call me, they go, yeah, you were the 2nd best candidate. And so they offered a job. I'm like, well, so now think about it. I have to reinvest back into Northampton. And I'm like, all right. And I'll tell you, mentally, it takes a lot out of you. When you don't get a position that you were trying to get for a month or two, your whole mind is that community while doing your job. So I reinvest in Northampton. And I'm like, all right, where can I polish myself off at? And then I get a call. And the same guy who's like, hey, remember that life experience? Well, apparently now you have it. So the first guy, he ended up didn't take the job. And they want to offer it to you. And I didn't have an ego about it because I said, well, they don't know me. Like they offered a job to someone they didn't know. And I can't fault them. 29 years old. They probably want someone with more experience. There's a lot going on in that community. I mean, their roof was leaking when I came up for my interview. And so I took it. I took that leap. And if I would have known now what I would have to do, I literally wouldn't have taken this job. So I think that naivete continues to help me in life. So maybe that's another lesson is like, don't worry about everything that you don't know. Jump in, man. Because like, we'll come back to experiences. You can learn everything in a classroom. I don't know how many people remember though, like the further you age in life, even who your professors were at some point, unless they had an experience on you that makes them memorable. Because I don't remember like, I don't know, 95% of the things I've learned in any course at any time. And look, with AI, I don't think you really need to remember a lot of it anymore anyway. I think those life skills are the most important thing you can if you want to be a successful municipal manager. So it's having those experiences, learning from your mistakes, and showing up every day. Sort of like when I was a teacher, like just learning every day, showing up, getting better, and preferably in safer environments. But at some point, you're going to have to take a risk. To fortune favor the bold. I think maybe New Hanover was a bold decision that turned out well for me.
I love it. I love it. Again, the twists and the turns. And again, you don't think you get it. And that's one of the things to remember too. It's the interview process, especially to become a manager, is long. It's not like a short. And so you can get, and again, you're trying to get bought in, you're trying to know that place. So you can feel all that momentum, and then it's not there. Now it's on the table again. And, tell us about New Hanover. Again, walk us through. You said it's a ton of growth. It's about an hour west, I think, of Philadelphia. Population around 13 plus thousand. What's gone on over the last decade? And again, you are the manager through COVID, through the pandemic. What's going on here as we close 2025? What are you excited about? What do you think are the challenges facing not only you in New Hanover, but also city management? I talk a lot about just the reality of the national scene politically, and how just incivility happening now, social media. We'll get into this, social media, and just the realities of what you guys have to face at the local level with real residents who have far more access to you than they do, the Senate or Congress at the national level. But that's what they get, is the inundation of that media and that hoopapa. So what's going on in Hanover, and what are you dealing with? What are you excited about? What are the challenges?
Well, and I want to start with anyone who wants to be a municipal manager. It is okay if you dip your toe and you're like, I'm okay being a number two. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think most managers are type A. You don't have to be an extrovert. You can be an introvert, but you still have to be a type A at some point. Like, you got to get stuff done, because you got to be okay. People not necessarily telling you what to fix. You just have to go fix it. You have to figure it out. You got to be resourceful. But I think the number one thing that municipal managers and those who want to be municipal managers is you have to understand your value system. I think, reflecting just on this podcast we set, I think a lot of my value system was subconscious at some point. Like, I knew what it was, never really like talked about it to myself and defined it, but like how I was raised and what I went through kind of created the values that I have that are still with me. I see a lot of managers fail when they try and be something they're not. So like, my style is not going to work for everybody, and people have to learn their style. I fortunately had a style coming into the job. And I think managers that don't have a style going in struggle, because they try to adapt to whoever is the loudest voice. And if not, it might work for a while, but every 2 years there's an election cycle. And one of the best lessons Pellegrino taught me is you never know who's going to be your boss. And like, he told me this great story about his best friend, like 20 years earlier. This is like sort of 10 years ago. He was dating this girl, and they became friends, and she was nice. And then, that girl left that guy, but it was 20 years later. And then she ended up being the chair of the board at Northampton. Like, it's such a small world. Like, and I'll tell you, like, the same things in my community is like the people that I see all the time end up being those like officials. So like, you have to get to know people, but like, you can't compromise your values. So I think when it comes to your values versus like the role, like, if the role doesn't suit your values, you got to make tough decisions for your life, because if you lose yourself in the process, you're not gonna be a good manager anyway. So like, getting back to like when I got to New Hanover, like it reminisces for me Wilkes-Barre. So for me, I fell in love with it from the get-go, because it just felt like an underdog community. And it still is. And there's 1,500 or 2,000 units being proposed. I feel like it was the Wild West at that time, where backdoor deals happened and developers ran wild, and you didn't know who was doing what. And the solicitor was township manager for a second, and also tax collector. just everything was wrong. And I was like, I could really build this from the ground up. But I also had, I have 2 board members right now that were the board members that hired me. And like, that's rare in itself. But we built so much commonality through shared experience throughout the decade. But it's when I got hired, the board was like, we need someone to rebuild from the ground up. And for me, I was like, I get to be a manager and a leader. And some communities just want a manager. Hey, we're going to tell you what to do. You do it. That's fine. Sometimes they need a leader to help guide them. And that for me, that scratched that mayoral itch from Wilkes-Barre for me. That allowed me to go like, hey, I can like really shape and guide policy in a different way too. So for me, it was about the best of both worlds. So New Hanover needed a full extreme home makeover in terms of like culture was off, staff was off, expectations were off. So like I would say my first 4 to 6 years was just finding the right people to put on the bus, right? I think I was lucky from the get-go with a great board. I think I have a great board still. And that, if you have a good board, that's half the battle right there. And like I would tell people, like, if you don't get a good feeling about the board, don't take that job. It doesn't matter the money. If you do not get along with the board, it's not going to last. It's just not. So at least statistically, it's not going to last. So board had the same values that I did. That largely works. And we started fixing. But the pandemic hit, right? We had to do a lot of that stuff. And that led to opportunities, Seth. So we create the 4-day, 36-hour work week here. We don't work Fridays. We did that largely to retain talent because we're kind of like on the opposite side of Montgomery County, where we're away from Philadelphia and we're closer to another county. People aren't driving here. So I was like, we got to get smarter in order to compete. We did those things. And then we started, making the right moves on personnel. And, I told the board, I'm like, at some point, like, I can't do everything all the time. You don't want me to. And that's also not my job. My job is to build a bench, is to work myself out of a job. I'm okay if you want to go with another manager who you think's cheaper or better, etc. Like, we all have our time. It's all going to change at some point. But while we're here, we're going to do some magic and we're going to do great work. But you need good staff. We built up our staff in all the positions. We're building our bench. And also we have some great developers in this township now. We had a lot of them. We had a lot of hard conversations. We've had a lot of litigation, but we've stayed focused on, look, we just want to make sure it's responsible development. And I think that's starting, like that 1,500, 2,000 units is going to start coming probably in the next, like 5-10 years here being built out. So my whole next 10 years, Seth, is going to be completely different than my first 9 years. First 9 years is like resetting, recalibrating, and positioning ourselves. And I think the next 10 years is going to be managing growth and how we do that. And I think it's fascinating, and I'm excited for it.
Well, and that's the thing about city management is you go through these cycles of it, like you say, what it took to start and turn over is going to be different now in this next season. And that's what keeps it fascinating, right? Like you said, it seems like your story is, if you're not fascinated, if you're not intrigued, if there's not challenge, it's kind of unmotivating. Right. And I think that is for really high level leaders, effective leaders. They need something to keep the fire burning. And that's why local government is so, I think, enticing to really inspired leaders, because, again, if you go in, you have a good board, you have people that really want to see a place flourish, there's so many opportunities with economic development, with community engagement, all kinds of things to put that energy towards. If you go in to a situation where it's just kind of like, we don't want to ruffle the feathers, we're just going to do it the way it's always been done, that's not a great place for a really go-getter leader like yourself. So again, know the fit, know the place, but then go in and start to do the work. And that's what's encouraging to see. You've done a great work in New Hanover, and it's just getting started, right? It takes time to change, to turn the ship, and to get it going in the right direction. But now that it's going, so we're excited to see what lies ahead for that township.
Well, and I think what is underutilized still is people in the municipal management field, I feel, underestimate the value of how important each other are. We're all a resource. So like when I started in New Hanover, I didn't have all the documents, but I knew who to go to. And every municipal manager I've ever dealt with is like, hey, here's a document in Word. Take it. It's okay. Make it better. How many other fields can really do that where you're all one giant resource for each other? I just think, I hope, I really do, that I think our generation, millennial, we still know how to talk to people and get out and do that. But I think like newer managers are losing that, especially with the COVID and the Zoom and all that stuff. Like, I get it's more convenient, but sometimes you have to put convenient away for long-term practicality and success. You got to get to know people. It comes back to likability. You got to be there for other people, because I can't do this job alone, even though I'm at the head of this community. I rely on my other managers to help me, and I will help them out. This is why I'm doing the podcast, is because if other managers are doing the same thing, Seth, and I'm going to listen to them, and they're going to make me a better manager. And there's enough in that pot of gold for all of us. And if we're all strong, all these residents of all these communities are going to be happier anyway.
Absolutely. That's what, again, the HaltingWinter Project, which the podcast is a part of, is the work that builds belonging. That's what's unique about local government, is you're not like private sector is all competition, right? Amazon against Walmart, et cetera. Local government's not like, we're all trying to thrive, and we're all trying to be unique. I think that's the beauty, is when a community goes, what makes us unique? And let's lean into that. And let's invite people who want to share that here. And if they want to live in Philadelphia, great. You want to live in New Hanover, great. But let's own who we are, not try to be what everyone is. I love that, one of the last things I want to get into, what you just talked about there is like a millennial city manager, some of the things like AI, social media. But before I do that, you just mentioned community, the Montgomery County Consortium of Communities. You've been on the executive committee. I think you're the president now. In this year, again, these are these opportunities, right? I love that when I had Christopher in Solberry on, he talked about a lot of there's just groups, whether that's your state association, you mentioned the ICMA National Association, but there are county groups and local regional groups. There's ways for you to be in community, to share those things, not have to feel either alone in how you do it or just alone in a relationship. And so I love that you're a part of that. You're continuing to bring people together.
Well, I think, look, being president of that consortium for me is like one of the biggest honors. One, we're in our 49th year this year and 50th next year. And I think we're one of the strongest consortiums anywhere. I've been on this executive board for probably 6 or 7 years, like before COVID. We got to a point where we had 4 people come to the meeting. We probably weren't going to be an organization. Now we can get 30 to 50 at a meeting. But I remember when I came into the field, when I was in Bucks County, everybody went to the consortium meeting, and that's how you learned from other managers and you got to know other people. And I just think COVID wrecked a part of that, and I think we're starting to come back for it. And I think people are starting to learn again. But look, I want to get a little bit personal and be a little more authentic here. Is I had about 2 years ago. So I have a 7-year-old right now. I have a 2.5-year-old, and I got one on the way in January. And I want to talk about something that I don't know a lot of people talk about, like mental health and stuff. But for me, municipal managers have access to good meals and good cocktails at all times, stuff like that. And look, I took advantage of that. But when my job started to get really hard, I started to cope through alcohol a lot. And I just got to a level where I didn't feel like myself anymore. And all the reputational things that I did to earn credibility through slow positive gestures over time, I was losing my reputation quickly. And it was all because of this alcohol, because I would say the wrong thing or this, and my edge was coming off. The edge that got me where I was also bringing me down. And 2 years ago, I had a reality check. So when my second was born, I realized I can't cope that way anymore, because I municipal managers want to do everything all the time. And I'm I also got to be a good husband. I also got to be a dad, but now I have a second kid. And I was something has to give. And I was I'm done with this. I'm done. And I literally, it'll be 2 years next year, in January. And I was I made that concerted effort where I was no, I'm stopping that. I'm going to apologize to anybody I've done wrong. and I'm gonna rebuild my credibility and reputation, how I always have been through time and actions and not words. And last year when I really wanted to help the consortium in a different way. And I did those things. So like when the consortium board wanted to make me president, like for me, that spoke volumes about like, I'm not going to get there unless people think that I'm worthy of that. So from a reputational standpoint, that's the highest honor I could have got at that point. So like that grind is still there for me, to bring people together. So like, I share that story is because at least in my story, it wasn't all linear. There were a lot of hiccups along the way. We just haven't covered them in this podcast. But like, there's a difference between failing and falling. And I just learned that at the ICMA conference through Jim Yule. Like, those were falling. I had a lot of good people that allowed me not to fail and allowed me to learn from those falling instances. And without them, I wouldn't be a manager right now. And so like, I thank all of them. This is why I want to pay it forward. But like, from the mental health standpoint, that helped me. I got my health back in order, and like working out 3 times a week, like all that also helps me be a good municipal manager because I have more energy. I'm not as moody, like all that stuff that you carry into work. Like, we all get an elected official says it the wrong way, right? It's not about what we say, it's about how we say it. You get that email, but I come off those and they don't bother me anymore because I'm like, who matters in your life? Your family and your friends. And so like, this is why I want people to be like, I might be a municipal manager, but I'm also not defined by it. I want to be known as like a really good friend, a really good husband, and a good dad. And like, I heard this the other day. I want to share what he said. Because I'm always like on Facebook with the inevitable scroll in life, right? And I have like my algorithms filled with like other dads that are challenging me. And one guy's like, hey, I want you to remember, like, the only people who remember that you stayed at work late are your kids. And like, think about municipal managers. How many night meetings do we have? I got to get that thing done. And it reminds me of what Pellegrino told me. He's like, don't be that guy. It'll be there tomorrow. I'm like, let it go. If people don't like you because you didn't stay 5 more minutes, it's whatever. Like, if you are good at what you do, you will always be hireable, period. And don't be afraid of the what ifs in life.
What you just said is so in light of my most popular keynote I give in conferences around the nation is balance is BS. There's no such thing as work-life balance. What there is intention. And I think you just nailed that. Like you have to choose. The illustration I use is a rubber band. A rubber band can only be pulled in so many directions before it snaps. And so the way to get rid of this idea of balance and to go, what do I want to be intentional towards? And like you say, all of a sudden, I think like a job of a city manager can be overwhelming. You can be pulled in so many ways. There's late nights, there's this, but like you just said, the key is only my kids are going to know that I was the first in and first out or the last out. Like the people that we love the most are usually the people who get the scraps of our life, especially when we're in leadership, especially when our identity and worth and values on the line professionally. And so I just love that you've been honest about the challenges of that, but also the intentionality about now trying to help other leaders be mindful. That doesn't mean you're going to nail it all the time. No one gets a AA plus. You have to learn, right? It's part of the journey of life. And so I love that you're trying to figure that out. How do we wrestle through? How do we wrestle through the identity? How do we wrestle through the intentional aspects of life? And it's seasonal too. I think that's the other thing. Like now's, we're recording this heading into the holiday break and things slow down. Well, be intentional about that. Soak up those moments with your kids, with your family, with your friends. Make sure that you are, like you said, a leader who is holistically healthy will be more healthy professionally. If you don't have a personal health, if you lose yourself personally, I think that's where I woke up my story. I thought I was professionally successful. And you looked at the stat line and the metrics and you go, wow, this guy's really an effective leader. But if you look between the cracks, if you looked at my team, my staff, and looked at their health, you'd be like, okay, something's not right here, right? These people are stressed out. There's massive pressure. There's not really vitality. We're working way too much. We don't have healthy lives in the other areas of life. And so I love that. Yeah, I love that. So it's so important, especially now. I think younger people are valuing that more. I think that's one of the differences in the generations. You might speak to that in the older generation. And again, I don't think it's just because personally, I think it's the culture. The culture is very much work, 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 work. Your whole identity is in your work. It's in what you buy with what you earned. And now younger people are like, listen, like I want to experience life now. I don't want to wait till retirement. Like I'd like to have more holistically, a more holistic life. What is that? How do you lead that in your staff? Again, when you seem like a guy who wants to get a lot done, it's still there. It's not like you're just swinging the pendulum to, hey, let's just do 2-hour work days. Like how do you get a lot done, but how do you also live in the tension of that intentionality, and how do you lead a staff to make sure they're being intentional with the whole of their life and not just the professional aspects?
So my personal managerial philosophy is the 80-20 rule. So I tell staff 80% of the time you should be working. 20% of the time you should be growing or connecting with your with fellow staff members. So I don't worry about I love municipalities. And one of the things I really adore is when people are like, we have a lunch break, but we don't pay people for lunch break. And I'm like, why? Cares? Like as if we work 40 hours a week, white knuckling it. No one does.
Right.
And even if you're not mentally doing it anyway. So I'm just like, it's like this, it reminds me of Loser County again. It's like the wrong, what do we want? I want great work done often. In order to do that, I need relaxed employees who are not afraid to take chances. I'm not a micromanager. I would love to do it. I just don't have time. and if I micromanage, I'm not being a great leader anyway. So 80-20 is I'll go out and I'll see like my assistant and she's talking with the finance director. And I think one manager might go, they're both not getting work done. I'm like, they're both bonding. They're both bonding. That's a good sign of a healthy culture. Now they're doing it for 7 hours straight. It's a whole different story. But they're not. Like it's when things need to get done, they get done. Period. That's how I instill that. But time, action. Like I mean, we only have about 30, 35 people in this organization, but we touch 13, 14,000 lives. And I do final interviews for everybody who comes in here. Not everybody works out. And I tell everybody, look, you are not only here for an interview for me to understand you, you are also interviewing me for your life too. This to me is a version of a family. I'm not saying we're your number one, but you're gonna spend a lot of time here. And, I think we need to take care of you, but you need to take care of those residents. And if you're not going to stay here. So I think it's being upfront, honest, transparent with people about your expectations. They change. You have to check in. That's where I mentioned Jim Yule. I just learned I keep using sort of like checking in versus checking up. Not perfect at it, but like you're trying to find that balance of being authentic, but not too much. And it's day-to-day life. I might be a little different if I had a bigger organization, but I think with a smaller staff, it's you do get more out of them. But it's I can say different things. So I think about my mom and that presence. It's like people can understand my moves and not. And I try to have, so 80-20 rule, checking in with your staff, seeing how they're doing, checking up, with projects. But like, also I've learned a lot about myself this year in terms of like my communication style and expectation of, it's not going to work for every employee. So adapting to them too. Because at the end of the day, I just want the project done right. Right. So, and I think it's a lot of luck, Seth, to be honest with you. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. But I think when you come to an organization, if you are real with your people, they'll be real back. And sometimes it takes a longer time. But like I was talking about the interview process, and I lost my thought for a second, is like I do tell people about like the family aspect of this organization. But I'm like, look, you're going to have a bad day. Don't make a bad day worse. If it's bad, fix it. I've had employees who make the second wrong decision because they make an assumption about what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to do that. I just want people to own it, learn from it, move forward. And when I can get an employee to do that and they see it, they become great employees because they then are not afraid to fall. And that takes time. And you get I'm not going to my 10th year of being a manager. My reputation, I can ride on that. because we were like, oh, here's how Jamie is, right? When you're a first manager, like it's less chatter and more being there. So like I tell new managers, I go, I've been the manager who was in the plow truck plowing, not like a CDL license, like we have a little baby truck. I was plowing for 14 hours with Public Works. And all of a sudden they opened up to me because they're like, he did it because I took their excuse away. Get out in there with your people, see what they do. And you'll also learn more. Isn't that like a study based on like Toyota or like Ford or something where like get on the floor? You take these things over time, you try them. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But take the excuses away.
Well, I love that. It goes back to what you said. There's nothing wrong with falling. Falling is different than failing, right? You fall, you get back up again. Failing is really I think the definition of failure is just stop acting. Like I don't want to act anymore because I'm afraid of the consequences of real, catastrophe, of failure. So so good. So many insights. We could go on forever. I want to be mindful of your time and the length of this podcast. I do want to ask one final question because I know you just moderated something called Clicks, Credibility, and the Common Good.
I'm about to.
You're about to. Okay, so it hasn't even happened yet. The Modern Dilemma of Government on Social Media. Give us a preview of this because I think this is one of the things, right? What do we do with social media? What do we do with trying to be on it because everyone's telling us we got to be on all these channels, and then I don't want to because I have to deal with comments and the same 10 people who gripe and complain at everything. Give us a millennial's take on how a city manager is supposed to deal with social
media. So I just built like my moderator outline. And I again, one of my philosophies is like, I don't really want to do a presentation unless I have something to say. And I don't have anything to say, which is why I'm moderating it. But I found 3 other people who have something to say and should say it. Michael Paulus is one of them. Love him as a human being already, but like all 3 different styles on this panel. But I am fascinated after I see him, and I'm fascinated on this question of like some municipalities go too far in my mind on social media. And I almost feel like you're a municipal manager, not social media. Like what? And I started thinking to myself, what is a municipal manager? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? And, look, I don't know, it's my opinion. We don't deal in headlines. We deal in potholes, permits, and people's trust. That's responsibility. Government's boring. And when it's boring, it works. And like, I don't know, you ever think like in this era, it's showy? And like, I'm certainly one that likes to have fun and be showy myself. But I'm like, government is at its finest when you don't know what's happening and it works. I'm not saying don't be transparent. I'm just saying like, you have access more than you've ever had to your government today, regardless of the community. But like people want to go with their lives and enjoy their families. Like they don't like really want to come to a meeting and talk about a budget. They just want to know if you're spending their money wisely. That's it. So I'm fascinated with social media is like some I think goes so far, and I'm like, but how much time or your opportunity cost your time are you going there? Some have like incredible good balance. Like I look at Michael and I'm like, I don't know when this guy sleeps. So this panel is focused on how to balance that. And is there a balance, what it looks like? And I think that's something that I don't see a lot of people talking about. So that's why I'm trying to bring that to the forefront for people that want to get involved.
I love it. I think these are the things, right? I love this idea because you're getting people who are on different sides of the spectrum and saying, well, what are you doing and why? And let's talk about it. Because again, that's how we learn and how we experience to go, because I think it is different. Not everyone's going to be a Michael Paulus who just seems to like love it. He loves sharing. He loves the story. He loves being fun. And I think that not every city manager is going to do that. Not everyone wants to value, not everyone wants to be in front of the camera, wants to be kind of funny. It doesn't care about how, kind of they come across sometimes. Michael he can be self-deprecating to the nth degree. And again, you got to figure out but I think that's the beauty of what you're doing is moderating the discussion to give people an idea. I think that's the issue of city management. Sometimes you can live in your own bubble in your own place and try to figure it out yourself. And then you start, I don't know, there's something about the human mind that talks yourself out of things or disqualifies, and then you just kind of get into a negative, oh, I can't do it. It doesn't work here. And all of a sudden you go, oh, I didn't know that. That's how he does it. That's the practicality of it. It only takes this much time. Oh, okay. Now I know how Michael sleeps, right?
and he does it well. And I'll give you a taste of like just what one of the questions that we're gonna do is like it's platforms reward attention, governments reward trust. Are those goals compatible? I think Mike does it, and I think he does it well. I don't think most people would be able to replicate what he does, but he just has that brain that is able to bring that to life. That I think has a like if you're the rock and you throw the rock into the lake, it has this positive ripple effect. And so it's like I want people to see that, but I go back to our whole talk is like I did better as municipal manager when I stopped saying this is the only road you can go. And I was like, I can go off this beaten path. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's more me. I want people to see that. I want people to be like, you might not be able to do the Michael path, but maybe we can give you some tools where you can go on your own beaten path and make it work for you.
Oh, I love it. Oh, we could go on forever. I want to mention not only you've mentioned your wife, you're about to have another baby, add a third. Now you're going to be outnumbered. The terrorists are going to win. Just getting you ready for that. I have 4, so I know how that is. Your wife is an author. She just wrote I think it's her second book now. It's called That's Just Not True, How to Replace the Lies You Didn't Know You Believed with God's Unchanging Truth. Sounds awesome. Maybe close with this just because what's it like? I mean, having a wife who's an author, I mean, writing a book is an undertaking. You're a busy guy. You're leading a city. How do you support a wife who's also a mother of multiple kids, who's pregnant, who's trying to write a book? What does that look like? Trying to be intentional with serving her, leading a home. How do you make time? How is Jamie making time for that relationship and for that side of life?
Well, I think I'm lucky because we we made a decision back in 2020 to move to New Hanover Township. I always said I would never live in a community that I was manager of, and then I did because I fell in love with it, became my Wilkes-Barre, and so I'm only about less than 10 minutes away from home. That certainly helps. Communication, right? We all talk about it. Communicating doesn't work every single day, but like. I married my best friend. So it's not unlike me being a municipal manager. She's, how I serve the pleasure of 5 board members. I serve the pleasure of 1 wife. So, which she sets the policy and I implement, Seth. That's what I'll say.
There you go. Wise man. It's so good. So good. Here's the, anything else you'd leave for the audience before I wrap up and thank you for so much time today and for so many insights.
I hope that a lot of people, there's a nugget of something in there for, most, if not all of your listeners. But just, if I can have one takeout, I want people to understand that don't worry about what you don't have today. You will gain that through your experience. You will not know where it's going to take you. But if you, in your heart of hearts, love the field of municipal management, you will be fine. You'll be fine. There are 1,000 on that, and 1,000 on that of different ways we've all gotten there. And whether you get there when you're young or you're more polished in life, you will do that thing that you want to do and you'll make that change. And I will say this is don't worry about what people write on Facebook. It's probably not true. And you know what? You will get those emails or those phone calls if you're lucky like me, they come right to your voicemail. Create a folder in your inbox called best emails and put them in there. And over time, go back and listen to them. And you remember that it's still okay today. And if anything, you'll get to write a book like I guess everybody else wants to write too, of all your experiences.
Oh, it's so good. So good. Oh, it's so true. It doesn't matter. Remember that again, we live in it's interesting that when you take the pressure off survival, kind of the human story of just surviving, when you take the pressure off survival, people find a lot of free time to complain and kind of not do, I think, positive things with their life. So that's why I love this podcast. Do something positive. Maybe go in and start, if you're a resident, maybe be a part of a committee or something that will actually bring some flourishing to your place. If you're in local government, continue to aspire to leadership and impact. And if you've run the race, thank you for serving well. And I'm glad to be a part of shining the spotlight on the incredible work you're doing. Thanks for leading New Hanover Township well. I look forward to watching over the next decade to see you guys continue to thrive and flourish. Jamie, thanks for sharing your life, your leadership journey, and your insights with us today.
Amen. Thank you, Seth.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter Podcast are part of something bigger, a movement to remind us where government truly lives. No, not in Washington, D.C., but right here at home, where we live, where we work, and where we play. Because it's in our cities, our counties, and our communities that the real work of democracy happens. And when local government thrives, people thrive. If this conversation inspired you, take a small step that makes a big difference. Subscribe to the podcast, share the episode, and follow along on social media. Every click helps amplify the stories that build pride, purpose, and belonging in local government. To learn more about the Halting Winter Project and how you can be part of the work that builds belonging, visit HaltingWinter.com. I'm Seth Winterhalter, and until next time, this has been the Halting Winter Podcast.